Joe were a nice lad, but it did go on a bit. Proper sorted geezer you are, Mush. Proper love you. Always have done. Me mum love you and all, and our kid. You've always been there for us, man. Proper sorted. Where'd me and our kid have been after me mum died? You were there, man. Always have been. Joe, I said. He would have gone on all night if I'd let him. You drive, will you? I'm tired. I pulled in at the old bridge at Kirby Longsdale on A65. It's a great place to stop on the way back from the lakes. On a sunny Sunday, it gets packed with bikers showing off their machines, children playing in the river, families having picnics, young lads risking their lives jumping off the bridge into the rocky waters below, and young lasses egging them on. At 1 o'clock in the morning, on a rainy autumnal Tuesday, of course, Joe and I were alone. It's a long story what Joe and I were doing in Kirby Longsdale at 1 o'clock in the morning on a rainy autumnal Tuesday. Suffice to say, I was working in children's homes when I was little more than a child myself. Over the years, I've developed my own programme for dealing with the disaffected youth, and it involves a great deal of fell walking and mountain climbing. In later life, I tired of all the rules and regulations in social work and tried my hand at other things. But at heart, I remain a kind of unofficial freelance social worker, especially in my spare time. And I don't think it's fair to withdraw support for young people at some random age like 18 or 21. My commitment's for life, or for as long as they want me in their lives. I stay with them until they're really ready to go out and scale those hills alone. One way or another, I've collected a few waifs and strays along the way. There's the Shed Crew kids, of course. In '95, I met a gang of about a dozen kids in East End Park, Leeds. They called themselves the Shed Crew because they lived in a shed. Most of them were on the run from the care system and preferred living in a garden shed to living in a children's home. They were out of school, offending regularly, abusing solvents and other substances, and generally running wild. The original feral kids. Before them, I knew Joe and his brother Eddie, and before Joe and Eddie, there were 2 or 3 others I took under my wing while working as a social worker. All my charges have grown up now and have kids of their own, 32 at the last count. So my family, and I do see them as family, has really expanded at an exponential rate. Joe and I, and several more of my unofficially adopted foster kids, had gone to the lakes to climb Scafell Pike, the ultimate challenge, in England at least. It's a great feeling getting up there with the wind and rain in your face. And the others had decided to stay on to tackle a few more peaks. Joe and I, unfortunately, had commitments that required our return. Joe had a newborn baby and his partner wanted him home, while I had an important deadline to meet. The 2 of us relieved ourselves against the dry stone wall, and then Joe took over at the wheel. As soon as we were back on the road, he was off again. Proper sorted geezer, Mush, swear to God. Proper rate you, man. Remember when our kid were on the run, you let him hide out at your house? And after my mum died, I stayed at your house about 6 weeks. We owe you millions, me and our kid, man. Never be able to pay you back. Joe, I said, did I ever tell you about the Good Conductor? I had to say something to shut him up. He was always going on about how great I was and how much he owed me, which I found embarrassing, because in my view he didn't owe me a thing. When I returned to Leeds in my late 20s, after 10 years in London, I hardly knew a soul outside my family. His mum Cooch was a brilliant friend who introduced me to everyone she knew, allowed me into her home, trusted me, fed me, allowed Joe and his brother Eddie to become like my own, and gave me love and warmth when I needed it most. I was hardly likely to abandon the boys after her sudden death. Cooch just dropped dead one day in the street from a brain hemorrhage. She was in her mid-30s. Joe was 14 and Eddie was 19. Eddie was in prison at the time doing 5 years for trying to rob a post office with a toy gun. I have a permanent image seared into my mind of Eddie at the funeral, handcuffed to 2 prison officers, looking lost, forlorn and uncomprehending. The real dad did most of the work in supporting the boys after their loss, but I stayed in touch, in the background, should they ever need me. If anything, I felt it was I who owed the debt for all the love, loyalty and trust I'd been shown by Cooch and her kids over the years. Good Conductor, Joe said. No, never heard of him. Who's he like? What's he got to do with vote? I'd told the story 1,000 times. I thought I'd told it to everyone I knew, but Joe had obviously slipped through the net. He did so much talking himself that it wasn't always easy to get a word in edgeways. I told him about the Good Conductor I met on a train when I was 23. I lived on the A1 in Hatfield, 20 miles north of London. I was a student at Hatfield Polytechnic training to be a social worker. The police called at my student hovel early evening, but I didn't answer because I thought they'd come to evict me. I hadn't paid my rent in months. But then I got to thinking, my mum hadn't been too good, and what if it was something about her? We had no phone in the hovel, and mobiles hadn't been invented yet, so I had to nip down the phone box. I rang home to Leeds to find my mother in hospital and not expected to survive the night. "Get home, son," my dad said. I got to the railway station to find I'd missed the last train. A train was going as far as Peterborough, but I'd missed the connecting Leeds train by 20 minutes. I was a struggling student and didn't have the money for a taxi the whole way, but I had a screwdriver in my pocket and a bunch of skeleton keys. I planned to nick a car in Peterborough, hitchhike, steal some money, something, anything. I just knew from my dad's tone of voice that my mother was going to die that night, and I intended to get home if it killed me. "Tickets, please," I heard as I stared blankly out of the window at the passing darkness. I fumbled for my ticket and gave it to the guard when he approached. He stamped it, but then just stood there looking at me. I'd been crying, had red eyes, and must have looked of fright. "You okay?" he asked. "Course I'm okay," I said. "Why wouldn't I be? And what's it got to do with you in any case?" "You look awful," he said. "Is there anything I can do?" "Could get lost and mind your own business," I said. "That'd be a big help." I wasn't in the mood for talking. He was only a little bloke, and he must have read the danger signals in my body language and tone of voice. But he sat down opposite me anyway, and continued to engage me. "If there's a problem, I'm here to help. That's what I'm paid for." I were a big bloke in my prime, so I thought about ragging him down the aisle by his hair and kicking him into the next carriage, where he couldn't bother me. But somehow, it didn't seem appropriate. He wasn't really doing much wrong. The only other thing I could think of to get rid of him was to tell him my story. "Look, my mum's in hospital, dying. She won't survive the night. I'm going to miss the connection to Leeds at Peterborough. I'm not sure how I'm going to get home. It's tonight or never. I won't get another chance. I'm a bit upset. I don't really feel like talking, so I'd be grateful if you'd leave me alone. Okay?" "Okay," he said, finally getting up. "Sorry to hear that, son. I'll leave you alone then. Hope you make it home in time." Then he wandered off down the carriage back the way he came. I continued to look out the window at the dark. 10 minutes later, he was back at the side of my table. "Oh, no," I thought. "Here we go again. This time I really am going to rag him down the train." He touched my arm. "Listen, when we get to Peterborough, shoot straight over to platform 1 as quick as you like. The Leeds train will be there." I looked at him, dumbfounded. It wasn't really registering. "Come again," I said, stupidly. "What do you mean? Is it late or something?" "No, it isn't late," he said, defensively, as if he really cared whether trains were late or not. No, I've just radioed Peterborough. They're going to hold the train up for you. As soon as you get on, it goes. Everyone will be complaining about how late it is, but let's not worry about that on this occasion. You'll get home, and that's the main thing. Good luck, and God bless." Then he was off down the train again. "Tickets, please. Any more tickets now?" I suddenly realised what a top-class, fully-fledged Doylem I were, and chased him down the train. I wanted to give him all the money from my wallet, my driver's licence, my keys, but I knew he'd be offended. I caught him up and grabbed his arm. "Oh, I just wanted to..." I was suddenly speechless. "It's okay," he said, "not a problem." He had a warm smile on his face and true compassion in his eyes. He was a good man for its own sake and required nothing in return. "I wish I had some way to thank you," I said. I appreciate what you've done." "Not a problem," he said again. "If you feel the need to thank me, the next time you see someone in trouble, you help them out. That'll pay me back amply." Tell them to pay you back the same way, and soon the world will be a better place. As I boarded the train, the feeling of relief was majestic. My mother was big on duty, and it was my duty to be there at the end. If I'd have let her down, as I had done on so many other occasions, there'd have been no opportunity to make amends. It was life or death. The train pulled off the second I shut the door, while a tannoy message apologised to passengers for the delay due to signalling failure. The carriages were crowded despite the hour, and I struggled to find a seat. After walking virtually the full length of the train, I managed to find a berth. Sure enough, everyone was complaining about how hopeless the trains were, how they always ran late, and how the railway staff were a national disgrace. I knew better, of course, but I kept my thoughts to myself. There were too many other memories, emotions and feelings running through my head. For the next 2 hours, I stared out the window and tried to work out how I was going to cope with the inevitable. I was at my mother's side when she died in the early hours of the morning. Even now, I can't think of her without remembering the Good Conductor on that late-night train to Peterborough. And to this day, I won't hear a bad word said about British Rail. I've paid him back 1,000 times since then, I told Joe, and I'll keep on doing so till the day I die. You don't owe me nothing, son. Nothing at all. And if you think you do, I'll give you the same advice the Good Conductor gave me. Pass it down the line. Oh, I will, Chop, I will, said Joe. You watch. Next time I see a dosser, I'm going to give him £1. Bet you I do. You watch. No one ever called me Chopper except my mother, father, Cooch and her kids. Joe was a similar age to the age I was at when I met the Good Conductor. It took me 10 or 20 years to fully understand the Good Conductor's message, and I suspected it'd take Joe the same amount of time. Working through grief is a process that can take years, or even decades. With Joe, as with many young people, it were 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But as long as you were moving in the right direction, towards some kind of positive change or redemption, that was the main thing. That was what mattered. You do that, Joe, I said softly. You do that, son. Then I nodded off and slept peacefully the rest of the way home.